US Vice President J.D. Vance explains his refusal to kiss Pope Leo XIV's ring. Is his explanation consistent with Catholic doctrine? In the solemn context of the inauguration Mass of Pope Leo XIV on May 18, 2025, at St. Peter's Square, Vatican, US Vice President J.D. Vance made a notable decision by refusing to participate in the traditional act of kissing the fisherman's ring, a symbol of papal authority representing the succession of St. Peter. This act not only attracted public attention, but also sparked deep debates about the relationship between Catholic faith and public duty, especially for a Catholic politician holding national leadership. In an interview with New York Times commentator Ross Douthat, Vance explained his reasons behind this decision and clarified his perspective on balancing personal faith and political responsibility. However, does his explanation truly align with Catholic teaching, or does it reflect a mistaken separation between his roles as a citizen and a believer? This report will analyze the event in detail, reactions from the Church, and relevant theological principles based on reliable sources and Catholic teachings. The inauguration Mass of Pope Leo XIV, the 267th Pope of the Roman Catholic Church and the first American to hold the position, was held in a solemn, international atmosphere. The event drew about 200,000 faithful, alongside the presence of numerous heads of state, religious leaders and delegations from over 150 countries, including Vice President J. Vance, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and Peruvian President Dina Boluarte. The Mass not only marked the beginning of a new papal reign, but also served as an occasion for the Catholic Church to affirm its role as a global spiritual leader, featuring richly symbolic rites such as the bestowal of the pallium and the fisherman's ring. In his homily, Pope Leo XIV emphasized messages of love, unity, and the Church's responsibility to combat injustice, particularly the exploitation of the poor. He called for a synodal church, open-armed, listening to every voice, while condemning religious propaganda and power games within the Church, alluding to divisions between reformist and conservative factions. In this context, Vice President Vance's refusal to kiss the ring became a focal point, not only due to the ritual's symbolism, but also because it raised questions about how a Catholic politician reconciles faith with public duty. Vice President J.D. Vance, who converted to Catholicism in 2019, explained his decision in the interview with Ross Douthat. He asserted that refusing to kiss the fisherman's ring was not out of disrespect toward the Pope or the Church, but stemmed from his duty as an official representative of the United States. He stated, "I was not there as J.D. Vance, a Catholic layperson. I was there as the Vice President of the United States. That contradicts the protocol for a Vice President. No disrespect intended, but I represent the country I serve." According to Vance, performing the ring-kissing ritual, a traditional gesture of reverence and submission to papal authority, could be misunderstood as prioritizing the interests of the Church above those of the nation, which he believes is incompatible with his role. He emphasized that the purpose of U.S. politics is to encourage people to live good lives, and he must act according to constitutional principles requiring religious neutrality in public office. Vance also touched on politically sensitive issues such as immigration, abortion, and family support, where he often faces tensions between personal views and Catholic teaching. On immigration, he defends strict border enforcement while affirming the dignity of migrants. However, he acknowledged that his positions have drawn criticism from church leaders, such as a February 2025 article by Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, now Pope Leo XIV, titled, "J.D. Vance is wrong. Jesus does not ask us to rank our love for others." Vance responded that he would exercise careful judgment based on church teaching, but does not necessarily have to comply with every Vatican directive, especially when related to public policy. He said, "I do not simply do everything the Holy Father tells me to do. That would violate the U.S. This stance reflects a clear view on the separation of church and state, which Vance considers necessary to maintain the neutrality of a U.S. public official. Vance's action and explanation sparked mixed reactions within the Catholic Church, especially from theologians, commentators, and traditionalist organizations. Some argue that Vance's decision reflects a misunderstanding of a Catholic's role in public life, while others see it as a reasonable effort to balance faith and political responsibility in a pluralistic nation. Theo Howard, a Catholic commentator and host of the Two Cities podcast, criticized Vance's position in an interview with LifeSite News. He argued that the separation between Catholic and citizen proposed by Vance is a theological error, contradicting the Church's long-standing teaching. He said, "The doctrine of separation between church and state, which Vance surely believes he is merely following, actually leads to a separation between church and state in Vance's soul, proving why the Church always condemns it. He is the vice president representing his country, but he is also J.D. Vance, the Catholic. These are not two separate men. They are the office and the man holding that office." This argument is based on teachings by popes such as St. Pius X and Boniface VIII, who affirmed that Catholics cannot separate their faith from public action. In the papal bull Unam Sanctum, 1302, Pope Boniface VIII declared infallibly, "It is absolutely necessary for salvation that every human creature be subject to the Roman pontiff." This statement emphasizes that the spiritual authority of the Pope supersedes secular power and that civil leaders are not exempt from obedience to the Church on matters of faith and morality. Similarly, Pope St. Pius X condemned the idea that Catholics can separate their role as believers from their public duties, stressing the Church's authority to guide Catholic decisions in mixed areas such as marriage, ethics, and education. Critics argue that by refusing to kiss the ring and openly affirming the separation of faith and public duty, Vance inadvertently positions himself in opposition to Catholic teaching on the unity of personal and public life. They maintain this act is not merely ceremonial, but sends a message that Catholic faith may be subordinated to political demands. However, some voices, especially US commentators, consider Vance's decision reasonable within the country's political and cultural context. The United States is a pluralistic nation with a constitution emphasizing separation of church and state. A high-ranking official such as the vice president performing a strongly religious ritual like kissing the Pope's ring could be seen as violating religious neutrality, sparking domestic controversy. An article in the Catholic Herald cited Vance's explanation, highlighting that he acted according to the protocol of a vice president without disrespect to the Vatican. Additionally, some observers suggest Vance aims for a pragmatic approach, where he respects Catholic teaching while prioritizing responsibility to represent all Americans, regardless of religion. This view is reinforced by Vance's public acknowledgement of the influence of his Catholic faith on policies such as family support and human dignity, while emphasizing decisions must be based on national interest and constitutional law. To assess whether Vance's explanation is appropriate, it is essential to consider Catholic theological principles and teachings on the relationship between faith and public life. The Catholic Church has long affirmed that faith is not merely personal, but must be expressed in every aspect of life, including politics. The Vatican II document Gaudium et Spes emphasizes, Christians cannot separate their religious life from secular affairs. They must participate in worldly affairs with responsibility and service. Similarly, the Catechism of the Catholic Church, Nub 898, teaches that lay people have the responsibility to permeate the realities of the world with the Christian spirit, including politics. This does not mean the Church seeks to control secular governments, but Catholic politicians are called to make decisions aligned with natural moral law and Church teaching, especially on issues of life, marriage, and social justice. Regarding the fisherman's ring ritual, it is a deeply symbolic act in Catholic tradition, expressing reverence for St. Peter's mission and the Pope's role as successor. Although the ritual is not mandatory for secular officials, refusing it in a solemn context like an inauguration mass can be perceived as a public statement of separation between faith and public role. This is particularly sensitive in Vance's case, as he openly emphasizes Catholic faith as core to his personal and political identity. Moreover, Vance's claim that following Vatican directives on public policy would violate the US Constitution warrants careful consideration. While the US Constitution prohibits establishment of a state religion, it does not bar public officials from making decisions based on their religious beliefs, provided they do not infringe on others' religious freedom. Many US Catholic politicians, such as the late Senator Edward Kennedy and former New York Governor Mario Cuomo, have faced similar tensions and adopted various ways to reconcile faith and public duty. However, the Church consistently emphasizes that Catholic politicians must not disregard moral teachings solely due to political or legal pressure. Vice President J.D. Vance's explanation for refusing to kiss Pope Leo XIV's ring reflects an effort to maintain religious neutrality and adhere to the protocol of a high-ranking U.S. official. In the U.S. political context, where separation of church and state is paramount, this decision may be viewed as reasonable to avoid controversy over religious favoritism. Nevertheless, from the Catholic doctrinal perspective, Vance's position raises serious questions about the unity of faith and public life. Catholic teaching, as expressed by Popes Boniface VIII, St. Pius X, and modern documents, affirms that Catholics cannot separate their identity as believers from their public roles. Refusing to kiss the ring, though explained as a matter of protocol, can be interpreted as prioritizing secular interests over the Church's spiritual authority. Furthermore, Vance's statement that he cannot follow Vatican directives for constitutional reasons risks endorsing a doctrine of church-state separation that the Church has repeatedly condemned. While Vance has the right to make decisions based on personal judgment and political responsibility, the Catholic Church expects Catholic politicians to act as witnesses to the faith, even in complex situations. Thus, although Vance's explanation may be politically pragmatic in the US context, it does not fully align with Catholic teaching on the role of believers in public life. His action serves as a reminder of the challenges Catholic politicians face in balancing faith and secular duties, and raises questions about how the Church and secular leaders can engage in more effective dialogue in an increasingly polarized world. The Catholic Channel sincerely thanks you all for watching this video. May God bless and accompany everyone. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to continue receiving meaningful content from us.